I believe God has something to say this morning. And if you would turn to Matthew, the 9th chapter, and we're going to read the 18th through the 25th verse. I'll read it in your hearing. Matthew 9, 18 through 25. While he spake these things unto them, behold, there came a certain ruler, and worshipped him, saying, My daughter is even now dead, but come and lay thy hand upon her, and she shall live. And Jesus arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. And behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years, came behind him, and touched the hem of his garment. For she said within herself, If I may but touch his garment, I shall be whole. But Jesus turned him about, and when he saw her, he said, Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith has made thee whole. And the woman was made whole from that hour. And when Jesus came into the ruler's house and saw the minstrels and the people making a noise, he said unto them, Give place, for the maid is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But when the people were put forth, he went in and took her by the hand, and the maid arose. Quickly mark the 5th chapter, verse 39 and 42. Mark the 5th chapter, verse 39 and 42. And when he was come in, he saith unto them, Why make ye this ado and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleeping. Verse 42, and straightway the damsel arose and walked. Why make ye this ado and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleeping. And this is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. We can get a couple brothers to help them put this up on the platform. The entire thing. With the roller. Somebody got to get that too. There's nobody in there. For those that are nervous, there's nobody in there. And if you could open this side of the casket. Amen. Look at somebody and tell them the funeral has been canceled. Come on, tell somebody else the funeral has been canceled. I know that's right. Now, if anybody knows me, well, y'all sit down. You can start. If anybody knows me well, whether it be family or friends, you know I strongly hate funerals. I have recently, within the last year, overcome my fear of them. And although they still cause a great amount of anxiety, I've been able to push past my fear and endure them if I have to. I believe that my fear was primarily because the first funeral I ever had to attend, I was only 10 years old. My childhood best friend was murdered, and I remember so clearly having to face death for the first time. I was young and I had no clue that I could feel such a deep amount of pain. It's almost like it was yesterday that my father came to my school to pick me up. and he told me the news about Bianca. The devastation of the news was and still is unexplainable. Imagine having to go to a funeral of a child and see a casket even smaller than this. You don't know what it feels like unless you've been there. And so this is why it has always been hard for me to attend funerals. People would ask, what are you scared of? You think the body will come out? Well, no, just the idea of it all just kind of creeped me out. For the second time in my life, in 2011, I had to deal with the devastating news of another death of a loved one. 3 o'clock in the morning, my sister and I get a call that my cousin in Texas, who was only 23, passed away in a boxing match. George was more like a brother to me. We grew up together. We were close. We talked often. We shared secrets. We loved each other beyond words. And I'm not really here to talk about our relationship, but I want you to understand that, again, I had to deal with death and the pain of loss. Death, as recent as this past Friday evening, I got the news, a phone call, that a dear friend of mine had passed away here in the city of Cleveland of cancer. He was only my age. Death, it's no easy thing to handle. And there's nothing that anybody can say to make you feel better. What do you say? Unless you have lost a loved one, then there's no way to relate to the pain. And although I was the childhood friend of Bianca, the sister to George, and the friend to Donald, who passed 2 days ago, and although I felt much grief, I am sure that the parents of these individuals faced a much deeper pain than I. I cannot relate to losing a child as they have and as Jairus has in the text. The frustration of even preparing for a funeral of any kind can be tedious and tiring. Choosing a funeral home, choosing a casket, creating a program that everybody wants to be on, getting the word out to the entire family, deciding where the funeral will be held, what loved one will be on the program, what will the loved one in the casket wear on his or her final time to be seen, what music will be played, what songs should be sung, what stories will be told, who will scream, who will sit in silence, who will cry, who will be angry, who will be mad, who will be happy, who will pass out from overexertion, who is the one person that will show up everybody's praying that won't show up, how many boxes of tissue will we need, how many nurses should be on duty, who should sit on the front row, who's allowed to enter with the family, who has to wait with the crowd, how many minutes will the speakers have, nobody ever takes 2 minutes. Who will be pallbearers? How many flowers will be placed around the casket? What will the gravestone look like? Who will preach the eulogy? And all of this has to be decided in the midst of crying and the pain of death. I can only imagine how Jairus feels here in the text when he thinks his daughter has died. I'm sure he was scared, angry, devastated, frustrated, hurt, and felt a deep grief that nobody could fix but Jesus. Jairus gets desperate. He had to have been desperate in order to leave his baby to go find Jesus. He believed that Jesus, the healer, could fix it, so he goes to search for him. In the 9th chapter of Matthew, Jesus has just finished performing healings and seems to have another long day ahead. The chapter starts off with a man with palsy. The people bring this man to Jesus, and because of their faith, Jesus forgives sins and heals him of this sickness. After that, Jesus passes a man named Matthew who was working and commands him to follow him. Shortly after that, he gets hungry and he decides to sit down and have a meal.